right, welcome. We are back with the Take Your Health Now podcast. This episode, we have a guest. We have Scott Tips. He is the president of the National Health Federation. He does a lot of work with food regulations, nutrition, Codex, which a lot of people have not heard about. Kendra and I have been in this, arena forever and knew very little about this before she met him. So we just wanted to bring this information to our audience. He is a great resource. This should be a great conversation today. So yeah, welcome and stay tuned.
Yes. So we will kind of dive in, like Jenny said. Welcome, Scott. So you've been the president of National Health Federation for 25 years. Is that correct?
National Health Federation for 19 years.
19 years. Okay. But
no, I think I'm on the 19th year.
Okay. It's a long time. And
but you're right on the 25 years with respect to going to Codex meetings.
Okay, maybe that's what the 25 had stuck into my head. Yeah, so we want to hear all about this. And the interesting thing about the Codex meetings, I really think people are unaware of them. So we will have you expound on that. But also just you've spent so many years really fighting for health freedom. I mean, when you go to those meetings, along with being the president of the National Health Federation, you're fighting this battle for people, and I don't even think people even understand that is happening behind the scenes for many, many years. So this is why we want to talk. So if you can give us a little bit of background on yourself, that would be amazing. And then we'll kind of jump right in.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kendra, for that. Background on myself, I got involved in politics when I was 12 years old, worked my way up from there, and was generally pretty interested in nutrition. California at Berkeley. Oh, sorry. I attended law school at University of California at Berkeley. And when I graduated a long time ago in a galaxy far away, my dear friends, Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw, the authors of the New York Times bestseller book, Life Extension, A Practical Scientific Approach, they suggested to me that I become a food and drug lawyer, which I actually did by taking courses from a great law firm called Keller and Heckman. And after that, I became one of the first two food and drug lawyers west of the Mississippi. And I developed quite a bit of clientele, supplement companies, medical doctors, alternative medical doctors, and the like. And one thing that kind of held them all in common was they were involved with this organization called the National Health Federation. So keep in mind, this is 1983. So I joined NHF in 1986, and 3 years later, I joined it on the Board of Governors. I joined it in 86 as a member, and then I became a member of the Board of Governors 3 years later during a kind of an internal board battle. And I also became their general counsel, replacing Kirkpatrick Dilling, who had been their legal counsel for years. And it's a position I've held ever since. That's how I got involved in the health freedom movement, and it kind of went up from there. After I moved to Europe, I suggested to Maureen Solomon, then president of the National Health Federation, that I attend the Codex Committee meetings on nutrition and foods for special dietary uses, as the name technically is. Okay. And those meetings were being held in Germany. I was living basically at Monaco in the south of France. So it was just a cheap a little over 1 hour flight to Berlin to attend these meetings. And I did. I started in the year 2000 doing that. And the first year I made a bit of a difference where I kind of shamed the US delegate into keeping an important point in the final report of the meeting, where it said that the US government supports the rights of consumers to take supplements. She was going to take that out. And I ambushed her during a break and I said, you do that and I'm going to let everyone know what you did, and it's not going to make you look good. So she put it right back into the report after the meeting reconvened. That was my first victory at Codex, and then I didn't have a victory for 9 years. So during that time, excuse me 1 minute.
It was probably surprising for them to have someone else there because it doesn't sound like anybody really knew except the government people. So now, surprise,
Right. Well,
and then they were expecting it.
yeah.
next time.
No, that's an excellent point. Well, as a matter of fact, there are a lot of industry reps there.
Mm.
At that time, I was on the U.S. delegation. I was a member of the U.S. delegation. I wasn't speaking on behalf of NHF directly to Codex. So there's a difference when you have that. What it means is you have to sign a contract basically with the U.S. government, with U.S. FDA, saying, I, Scott Tips, promise that I will not take a position contrary to that taken by the U.S. government at the Codex meeting in lobbying other countries' support. And so in an internal meeting of the U.S. delegation held on the Monday morning before the meeting starts, you can speak freely. I would, but you're usually outgunned by, not really outgunned because it's me against a bunch of losers, but
Outvoiced.
yeah, no, really, they represent. There's some nice people there. Don't get me wrong, some nice people. In fact, the woman who taught me the Codex process worked for the Coca-Cola company.
Oh.
So there's really nice people. I really shouldn't have said that part, but what I mean is a lot of them don't have their hearts in it, or if they do, they're totally misguided.
Right.
These INGOs acting for industry, and just looking at the small picture, they aren't looking at any long-term knock-on effects from what their actions are doing. And anyway, what happens is they usually have the ear of the U.S. delegate or delegates, usually an FDA person, sometimes a USDA person, but in this committee, it's an FDA person. So my voice really amounted to nothing. Plus, I was a newbie.
Yeah.
So they were very dismissive of me. But I was quite persistently vocal with them. They weren't used to that, like you were saying, Jenny.
Yeah.
And they got tired of it. And after a couple of years, the head of the delegation didn't let me back on the delegation, which at the moment, seemed like a disaster.
Yeah.
Oh no, I can't go to the Codex meetings anymore. Then I realized, hey, it's a losing proposition anyway to be on U.S. delegation. I can't speak out.
Right.
All I can do is bug the U.S. delegate until she gets angry at me. So I applied for accredited status with Codex so we could be our own INGO.
Nice.
Turned me down 2 times. Third time they accepted for us. We got on. But really what happened is someone at the Codex office was asleep at the wheel and they didn't realize what they were doing by letting us on.
Right.
And a few years later, they kind of pulled up the ladder, made sure that this mistake didn't ever repeat. And in fact, in the year 2007, 5 years after we got accredited status in 2002, they tried to kick us off. the Codex list of accredited INGOs, but I fought them on that and I won. And one reason I won wasn't my superior arguing skills or anything like that, but it was in the meantime, I think the Codex Secretariat, the office that manages all these meetings, they had really come to like us and respect us. And they fought for us on as well, so that we wouldn't be kicked off. They did it behind the scenes, I learned years later. and so that's why we weren't kicked off. We stayed on, and then, people were telling us at this time, gosh, Scott, NHF is wasting its money, it's wasting its time. Just get the heck out of Dodge and go spend your money more wisely elsewhere, and your time and your efforts and energy more wisely elsewhere. But, I'm kind of famous for ignoring things like that. So I ignored those comments and we just plodded on. And in 2009, we had a huge victory at Codex. Now, keep in mind, and I should have said this in the beginning, and I think Kendra set me up to say something like this, but for those people who don't know what Codex Alimentarius is, the commission is a body that was established 62 years ago under the auspices of the World Health Organization and Food and Agricultural Organization, the WHO and the FAO. And they created this body and called it Codex Alimentarius, which all it is Latin for food code. So it only deals with food, doesn't deal with medicinals, doesn't deal with medical devices, doesn't deal with homeopathy, none of that, just food and drink.
Okay.
At this stage in the world, it covers probably 99% of the world's population. And the reason it became so important and why the NHF started sending reporters to these meetings in the year 1997 was because the WTO had come into existence. Why was that important? Well, before it was just more like a debating society at Codex. If they adopted a standard, no one had to follow the standard.
Okay.
It wasn't obligatory. There is no enforcement mechanism to require people to do this. So with the Uruguay round of treaty discussions and international trade in the mid-1990s, you had the World Trade Organization created.
Right.
With it came these WTO arbitration panels. Now suddenly there's an enforcement arm. Now suddenly the standards that were created at Codex were hugely important. And you started having industry pile into this with newly created INGOs, international non-governmental organizations, so they could weigh in at Codex meetings and get these standards created. Because, boy, for example, they got a standard created for glyphosate, then that can be shoved down the throat of the world's population through Codex. And why is that important? Well, if, say, Brazil wanted to export its glyphosate-soaked grains to Europe, which forbade that, they could then file a complaint with the WTO as an unfair trade practice against the European Union for not allowing this grain, toxic grain to be accepted into the European region. And the first thing the WTO arbitration panel would do is they'd look to Codex. Is there a standard? And if there's a standard, case over. And, if there were a standard, And if the country, say Brazil, was meeting, if it were meeting the standards set by that particular glyphosate standard, then they would win. Brazil would win.
Yeah,
The EU
there's
would
so many
lose.
layers. That's yeah, it's not surprising that people don't understand this because it sounds like things
Yeah,
went back, you know,
and that's
century,
why it's
decades.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And that's why it's working now, and why
Yeah.
people are so hung up on whether a codex standard is enacted or not. And yet the problem I've noticed at the codex meetings is that it's sort of like a juggernaut, you know, everyone is so at these meetings so fixated on we have a standard, we've got to pass it or adopt it, really. We've got to adopt it. It goes up an 8-step process. No one ever thinks, oh, maybe we shouldn't have a standard for glyphosate. Maybe we shouldn't have a standard for dicot. Or if we do, maybe we should set the residue levels so incredibly high that they can't be met, and hence they can't be sold in international trade.
Right.
So this is the problem. And then you have a very compromised Codex Science Office, JEGFA and Jumper and others. JEGFA stands for Joint FAO-WHO Expert Consultation on Food Additives. So there's a real tongue twister. And the science officer is a very smart guy and actually a very nice guy.
Yeah.
You know, he just sort of goes along to get along. And I don't see any critical depth to their analyses of the harms and risk on things. For instance, at the most recent Codex meeting, he couldn't have been more effusive in his praise for Frankenstein meat, lab-grown meat, and he absolutely adores crickets for dinner and all this insect food that they're trying to shove down consumers' throats. So you have a lot of this going on.
Yeah.
And about, I'd say, a third to half of the Codex delegates have almost a literally religious adoration for the science coming out of Codex. So if Codex says this, you know, this cow patty in the pasture is good to eat, they all genuflect at the altar of Codex Science and go, yes, we're all going to create a standard for edible cow patties for people to eat throughout the world. I mean, this is the mentality. They don't stop to think, even for 1 second, oh, maybe it's not good for people to eat cow patties. Maybe there's a reason they should remain in the pasture instead of being packaged and sold around the world.
Right.
So this is an uphill battle we face at Codex. Having said that, even though we face an uphill battle because the momentum is against us, the momentum is in favor of all these industry standards
Right.
being passed. We do have a lot of people there, delegates there, who are in favor of stopping some of these things. They apply the precautionary principle, at least to toxins in food.
Okay.
So we tend to have a lot of allies with the European Union member countries, not always, but on toxins and foods, we sure do.
Right.
They've been quite good. And you may find this hard to believe, but the Russians have been quite good on that issue. The Norwegians and the Swiss have been quite excellent on it. And more often than not, one industry representative there, INGO, called the International Dairy Federation, has been quite good on these issues as well. India and Malaysia are our path now. And but you can pretty much count out all of the Western Hemispheric countries from Canada in the north to Chile and Argentina in the south. They just basically support whatever the U.S. supports, including Cuba and Venezuela. And then you have the evil princes, or I should maybe say princesses of the empire, New Zealand and Australia, who've never met an unhealthy codex standard that they didn't love, not like, but love. And they seem to do the dirty work for the empire. And in fact, I always say, Kendra and Jenny, if you ever just by happenstance stumble into a codex meeting one day, you don't know what in the heck is going on. But you need to take a position and speak out on something. All you have to do is listen to the Australian delegate, and whatever he or she says, you take a position 180 degrees opposite, and you'll be on the right side of hell every time. Every time.
That's crazy.
So that's my standard, right?
Yeah. It's so crazy how things like this, where, you know, like you said, there's genuine people, good people, things start out as a way to really help, and we're looking at health and, you know, people and getting food to where it's safe, and then it turns into this over the years to where it's very political and it's very, you know, my side, your side. We're not really looking at this, you know, safety and health anymore. It's, you know, what does my country want in industry and profit? And you really get away from that, what it was initially for. And you have to have people like you or the National Health Federation coming in kind of from the outside to be like, hey, let's take another perspective here, and look at actual health and safety.
Right. Yeah, this is extremely interesting.
That's what we do. We, you know, we talk to these delegates. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, what I was saying is we talk to these different delegates, and a lot of times we're successful at converting them to our position.
Yeah.
The problem is next year they may not be there. They may have died, they got promoted, got married, transferred to an industry job, turned Hindu. You don't know. And so it's kind of like struggling up a hill of sand, and the sand keeps, you know, running beneath your feet. And also, the delegates aren't always the same at the different committees. You know, Codex has something like 25 or 26 different committees at present. The main ones that we go to are the Codex Committee on Contaminants in Food, Codex Committee on Pesticide Residue, Codex Committee on Food Additives, Codex Committee on Nutrition and Foods for Special Dietary Uses, Codex Committee on Food Labeling, Codex Committee on General Principles. We don't go to the Mass Analysis Committee. We don't go to the Food Import-Export Committee. And we don't go, well, sometimes we do go to the Codex Committee on Spices and Culinary Herbs. But usually that's our NHF Swedish people who go to that for a number of reasons that aren't pertinent here. But anyway, those are the committees we go to. We've also gone to the Fisheries Committee one time to educate them on setting standards for mercury in fish, because the big problem there was they were just setting it on absolute levels of mercury in fish. You don't do that because you waste a lot of fish that way. Different fish, it's the ratio of mercury to selenium. If you have fish with high selenium content, even if they have high mercury content, just as long as selenium content's higher than the mercury content, you have pretty safe fish to eat. Sounds counterintuitive, but that's the case. I didn't realize this at Codex. So you take a fish like salmon, or a tuna, it'll typically have high selenium levels, even if it has high mercury levels. So you don't throw away the fish, it's still edible. However, shark has extremely low selenium levels, so it doesn't matter if the mercury levels are low or not. If they're higher than the selenium levels in the shark, which most likely they will be, then it's going to be a dangerous fish to eat, even if the absolute level of mercury doesn't seem that bad compared to another fish species. So they were just talking absolute levels at this. And this Codex meeting was hosted by the Norwegian government. So I had to fly to Norway, but we had a local Norwegian NHF representative there who also attended the meetings with me. It was actually quite interesting, but I felt a little bit like fish out of water there because I'm not used to going to that one. I go to the nutrition committee meetings instead, and that's where I really know the players. And then there's the Big Daddy meeting, which is Codex Alimentarius Commission. It's held once a year and alternates between the FAO headquarters in Rome and the WHO headquarters in Geneva. Although they don't really hold it at the WHO headquarters in Geneva, they hold it at the CICG Center in downtown Geneva. So we've been going to those meetings for a long, long time. And there's one upcoming in, I think, November, early November this year, 2025. And then there's but actually, now that I think about it, it won't be held in Geneva this year. It'll be held in Rome. So we'll be going to the Rome meeting, and we'll be going to the Chilean meeting for pesticide residue. And then that's it for us this year.
Yeah.
Interesting. What happened with I haven't heard, with the pesticide shield? I mean, this is off topic, but that they were, that we're pushing through. They were pushing it through, was it last week? And then I just didn't hear anything else about it. Do you have any updates on
Well, I haven't heard much on it either lately, but what I do know is you're talking about the pesticide immunity bills at the state level. Because at the state level, the industry's been very persistent and they've had some inroads. It won in Georgia. It was defeated in Iowa. I think they were attempting it in Illinois. I'm not sure what happened there. One of the Dakotas was also a defeat for, I think it was South Dakota, for the bill that was being introduced there. But, it's like Winston Churchill said, victory's never final. So you have to just keep fighting this until almost the end of time.
Right.
All it takes is for them to win once, unless you go back in and try to overturn it. But there's really no literal reason, even moral reason, for there to be pesticide immunity. All it will result in is us being drenched in pesticides, because if they get immunity, they're going to have a carte blanche to go around and just soak everything in pesticides, and to hell with the consumer. Who cares about the consumer's health doing that? And yet there's so much harm that comes from it. Every time I travel to the US, I'm very wary of eating any grains or frankly any food there, because it's so unhealthy now. And it used to be incredibly healthy food when I was growing up. It was Europe that didn't have healthy food. Now it's the reverse, although European food is being influenced more and more, increasingly more, by the American farming practices. So where do you go for safety these days?
Right.
Which is what we talk about all the time. It comes down to choice and what is available. And I did not mean to get you off track. I'm sorry, that just popped into my head when you were talking about the pesticides.
That's okay.
How the Codex standards that Scott's been talking about, how does this then filter down to the USDA and the FDA, you know, what is approved and that type of thing? How does that correlate?
That's a really excellent question. And there's a funny word that they use, harmonization. So
I'm sorry, that sounds
yeah,
funny.
it does. And it is kind of
harmony,
funny.
like music.
It is kind of funny. What I don't know about every single member state who's a member of Codex has done, but most of them have agreed to harmonize their own rules and regulations to Codex standards. Even the FDA has done this, and they committed in writing to do this in the Federal Register in 1997, and maybe since then as well, but that's their hardcore position. So what that means is you can forget all the local rules and regulations. The real battle, the real global battle, is at Codex. So we can win all these victories in the US and pass the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. But what will happen is in the end, the Codex Alimentarius Commission, codes of practice, standards, and guidelines will supersede all of that, will be harmonized to it. So, in fact, I don't have the book handy. I do. No, it's over on another shelf, but the volume 1 companion to this book, Codex Alimentarius Global Food Imperialism. Oh, you have it there. Thank you. The last article in that book talks about how the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, insofar as it applies, of course, to supplements, will be of no use in protecting us from Codex standards on vitamin mineral supplements.
Yeah.
So it's discussed in that book. And that book came out in 2007. This updated one is articles since 2007.
Right.
To nearly the present. And we're offering it online, by email, but as an ebook. But you can also buy it as a hard copy if you prefer.
Right.
In any event, that's how it will happen. And it's already happening. A lot of Codex member states are actually adopting Codex standards before Codex adopts them.
Wow.
That's how eager they are to have a Codex standard. Usually you'll find these to be third world countries who don't have the resources to have a department in their food agency or agricultural agency,
Right.
to do the investigations and analyses and come up with standards. So they're the biggest supporters of the Codex Science Office and the standards.
Yeah, that makes it sound so lovely when we're going to harmonize our rules with everyone. And it's interesting how big organizations do that a lot of the time. They take something that's not so great. We're superseding laws at local levels and we're having all of the power here, but we're calling it harmonizing.
But you know
Right.
what I laughed when you said that was because you said harmonizing, and I immediately in my head spelled it HARM.
Like harming.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I laughed. Because I mean that's essentially what they're doing, because
it's true.
It does come down
true.
to big business, big ag, big money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And don't get me wrong, not all of the Codex standards are bad. Many of them are actually quite good. They have, for example, an aflatoxin mold standard for dried figs that was pretty top, actually, thanks to the European Union. And then you have, just different standards like that are important and that help facilitate international trade. So it's not all bad, but what people need to realize is that NHF standards are not monolithic. You know, it's sort of like there's not one code that you, you know, a book that you refer to and page 29. It's a whole bunch of different codes, some of which were established 30 years ago, 60 years ago, some of which are just, it's like a freeway. You know, some cars are just pulling out of the driveway and starting on their way to their destination. That's one Codex standard. Others are midway there. Others are just pulling into the driveway to arrive home. Others have been parked in the garage for decades. So those are Codex standards if you just visualize it that way. And at 8 points, really not 8, but it's an 8-step process. So I'll call it 8 steps to stop it. You have an opportunity to stop a standard or to amend a standard or to alter it. And then once it's adopted, well, they do say they revisit standards, but I haven't seen it happen much.
Interesting. I also thought people, just as you were talking, I was thinking, you know, one thing that I think what is going on right now that's very relevant is that, you know, with the MAHA movement, people think that now somebody's coming to save them from everything. And that's not true. You know, people have to stand up and take responsibility for their own health and their own choices and that type of thing. So I, you know, say taking the food additives out of food or, you know, different things that are being talked about, but how does that actually associate with Codex standards? I don't think people
MAHA associate with Codex standards.
well, I mean, just a lot of what people are talking about right now is how food additives are colors, you know, the synthetic colors being taken out of food. So now, you know, the food is going to be healthy again, that type of thing,
Yeah.
rather than taking responsibility.
In some ways, the Codex standards could be better because, as RFK Jr. pointed out, and correctly so, the European standards on a lot of these things, such as food additives, food dyes, and the like, are tougher than ours. So if and a lot of the Codex standards in this department, at least, have adhered to the tough line of the European Union. So actually, I must say it, but the Codex standards would be an improvement, not a detriment. However, having said that, we're NHF, the National Health Federation, is actually, as we speak, we're having some research done into this to compare them. And we have a researcher working on it now. And in fact, if anyone has any extra information on this, I'd be delighted to receive it. But so the jury's still out to see on what we can do to make things better in that respect. Whether we follow Codex standards or follow the RFK Jr. You know, push standards.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Yeah.
Does that make any sense? Or
well, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure we have information to send you.
Okay.
Because the, you know, the one thing with the food colorants and the European Union standard and the plant-based colorants as opposed to synthetic. Now, you know, I've talked to you before, and Jenny and I talk a lot about the synthetic biology or the, you know, biotechnology. They're making these plant-based from that, which is, we call it GMO 2.0. So that's just as bad, even though it's a plant-based substitute. So that's definitely something to look into, but that's for another day. But anyway.
Well, I must say, you're a wealth of information on that subject. And you've already educated me a bit, for which you deserve credit.
Well, thank you. We've been in this business for a long time too, just from a different angle, you know, different perspective, not even a different perspective, just that while you were going to Codex meetings, we were, you know, doing it from a different avenue, I should say. I also wanted to ask, there was a good question I had. What was it? Oh, I wanted to ask, so the, you know, in my mind, Codex is here, and you said the World Health Organization is a part of that, but is the World Economic Forum a part of that at all? Like, how does that overlap? Or is there no overlap?
Well, ostensibly they are not. I mean, WHO is one of the parent bodies that contributes money to Codex Alimentarius Commission. The FAO, just between the two organizations, the split that I last heard was 85% of the expenses paid by the FAO, and only 15% of the expenses of Codex were paid by the WHO. And yet WHO sees itself as an equal to the FAO at these meetings. But the Codex Secretariat Office is really based in Rome and has FAO employees in it. Some WHO, but generally FAO. And just think of it this way. I'll leave it to you because I don't want to detract from one side or the other, but FAO is food oriented. WHO is drug oriented. So who do you think might be more inclined towards the NHF viewpoint of the two of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not hard to figure out. I think a fifth grader could figure that one.
Okay, that's interesting. And then the other thing I wondered is so if we're in the process of withdrawing from the World Health Organization, how does that affect the standards that Codex sets? If we, go ahead.
They could affect the standards, of course, but keep in mind, Codex is a separate legal entity.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though it was spawned by the FAO and the WHO, it's still a separate person, just like you are not your mother or father, you're you.
Right.
So Codex still has U.S. participation in it. The sad thing is, and I've seen them at the last Codex meeting. They were there in March at the Codex Committee on Food Additives held in Seoul, South Korea. And they seem to be good people. But what they really need is put me in charge of the U.S. Codex office. But I haven't seen any move to do that yet, because I have much more experience than these new people showing up.
Yeah.
And I know where the bodies are buried, and I can I think I could make more of a difference there than these other people do.
Right.
We're just clocking in and out.
Yeah, you're probably one of the, I was gonna say oldest. I didn't mean oldest, but
probably, yeah.
You've been there. You're probably one of the longest running delegates at the
when I look around, I can remember it just seemed yesterday that I was the new person on the block, clear-eyed little urchin, street urchin showing up at the door, being taught, how to hold a Codex paper properly. I don't know. Anyway, now I look around, I don't see any of the then old timers. And all these people have retired, have gone on, have died. And I'm one of the last men standing, last one of us standing there. And I probably have more experience than most people there. I think I even predate the Codex Science Officer. And the delegate from the International Chewing Gum Association started at the same time as I. So he's tied with me, chewing gum guy, for being there. But he doesn't speak out. He doesn't speak out too much. So who knows what'll happen with him? But nice guy. But anyway, yeah, it's sort of him and me. We're the ones who've been there the longest.
Interesting. Well, I suppose we should wrap this up because it's been almost an hour. Jenny and I can always talk for hours probably on this, but this would be
Well, now
another,
that my voice has improved.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're in the business of health. We helped you.
Yeah,
This has been a very interesting conversation,
Yes.
very enlightening, I should say, especially for people that have never heard of Codex. And I really think you would be amazed that people, even in the health space, in the health freedom space, who have never heard, they have no idea what the Codex, is all about and how important that is. And so, first of all, I'm going to say thank you for everything you've done for so many years. That's a lot of time and a lot of frustration. Wins in there too, but when people talk about health freedom, you've really been fighting for the people for so many years, and people have no idea. So thank you for that. And also, I think a lot of people don't even know about the National Health Federation. I didn't until last year, which is crazy because, we've been in the space for so long. But if you could just tell people, first of all, why you feel like it's, right now, I feel like the health freedom is more important than ever. And so maybe if you feel that same way and why you feel it's so important, and then how people can support the National Health Federation, because you are one of the last organizations standing on top of being the longest running organization. So how they can
true.
get on board.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Kendra. You said that very well. The NHF has been around for more than 70 years now, and we intend to be around for another 70 plus years, of course. It's really thanks to our, dedicated staff and our board of governors. And, I'm not the only one. I need to take a moment to recognize the efforts of others. I go to maybe 90% of the Codex meetings, but we've had other people who've attended. Catherine Carroll has attended Codex meetings, probably the most of any female activist in the health freedom movement. David Noakes, our former chairman of the board, has been to a number of these Codex meetings. Brigitte Lauren has been to one or two of them, and as have our local country representatives in Sweden, in Norway, and I think in Ireland, but I'd have to think back on that. But in any event, the National Health Federation is exactly what its name implies. It's an umbrella organization for, concerned consumers, concerned practitioners, concerned manufacturers, supplement manufacturers, or homeopathic compounding companies or entities and the like. And our purpose has been to protect the rights of not only the consumers, but the rights of the manufacturers to make these products for the consumers. Because if you have the right to take 1,000 IUs of vitamin E a day, and yet it's not around, then what good is that right? So you have to have both sides of the coin. So with the National Health Federation, we of course, our goal is to keep going at Codex, keep going to prevent the rise of the biomedical security state, which is what's really going on now. And this is where they're going to track all your data. They're collecting it in giant databases, even as we speak. And then they will use it to run society efficiently. Okay, who said that they had the right to run society? Certainly, or medicine even. And I mean, it's the individual's right. It's not these people's rights. The big two is even, was it just today? I was just writing something about it, and where President Trump proudly announced the data that will be collected from individuals and is being collected from individuals wearing Apple Watches, wearing any of these wearables, so it can go into this great big database so people can be helped. Well, there are two sides to that coin. Of course, on one side, they could be helped. Maybe they have a heart attack, fall down in their own living room, no one's around, and yet the wearable will alert the authorities, come rescue that person. So that's a good thing. And no one can deny that. But the bad part of it is they've been collecting all this data on you, and they trade it amongst themselves, and they'll use it to control you, to own you. And it will be a whole different world in 5 years' time or 10 years' time if we don't take action to stop it. So we need to pass something like a medical freedom amendment to the US Constitution to protect us from these events and from this data mining and from this kind of control.
Yeah.
And that's part of what the NHF is doing. And I want to urge everyone who's listening to this to please join with us, because we can't do it alone. We need your help. And, people like Kendra are to be commended, and Jenny are to be commended, because otherwise you would never hear about this. You certainly wouldn't hear about it in the mainstream media.
Yeah.
So you've got to go to alternative news sources. And one of those is right here with Kendra Duquette and with Jenny.
Yes.
Yeah, we talk about that side of things a lot, how, big industry, big government, they will put forth that idea of, we're gathering this data for the greater good. It's going to help us, with creating healthier outcomes for people, for safety. But you have to remember that entities like that are not altruistic. They're not doing something that's not benefiting them in some way. And you have to be empowered with this information so that you can make those choices. If you're just going with the flow, they're making the choices for you. So you have to have this information. You have to empower yourself. Then you can decide, you can make your decision either way. Obviously, our opinion leans one way. I think it's pretty well understood from all of our information. But if if you have the information, then you're empowered to make your decisions. But the problem is that people don't have this information. They don't have both sides. So this is very important. These kind of interviews, we love having people like Scott on. This is so informative. It gives people so much more of a foundation to learn from and to make decisions from.
Right. And the data, we've been talking about this for quite a while, and don't think this is future. This is not future. This is happening right now. And the next step is not wearables, but internalables. Don't made up word, but that's what it is.
I'm sure they'll find something more catchy.
Yeah. But the data, if you think about data, is one of the number one industries right now, is data, and
very
data
valuable.
And we've been in this health space for decades now, and working with people that have chronic conditions, chronic disease, chronic symptoms. And there is no AI or anything else that is going to help you with that. Literally, it's something that it has to be people. It has to be connection with people. And so even if, people get caught up in wearing these wearables and their data and tracking their data and then going through AI to, do testing and then have AI give you a program for you, which is what a lot of people are doing right now. That's kind of the way it's going. But it is there is no way to really overcome chronic disease and then prevent without a person and a connection involved, because of everything that is causing these problems. So yeah, it's a crazy thing, but you have to be able to have that choice. Like what Scott was saying, what Jenny was saying, you have to have the choice to not wear the wearables, to not take part in that data collection and relying on that data and listening to our own bodies. You know, our body has this amazing ability to heal itself, and we have to be connected to ourselves. We have to be connected to nature. We have to be connected to that side of things instead of this grid, you know, for lack of a better word, that they're building and wanting us to be connected to. And, you know, we talk about this topic all the time, and now this is getting off track, so I will stop. But that's a whole nother conversation. But the book that Scott was talking about, that's a really good book to read, because again, it seems so far out there and futuristic and far-fetched, but it is happening right now within the next few years. Right. So that's a really good thing to be aware of and to read. And of course, our opinion is take off the wearables and don't participate in that. But yes, so we can wrap this up for now, but we hope that this topic, you know, talking to Scott about the codex and the standards and health freedom, you know, this little piece of the health freedom movement, and then, you know, has been helpful. And then definitely support health, I was going to say Health Freedom Network, National Health Federation, because, you know, we've had a lot of organizations come and go in the last 5 years, almost 6 years now, of people, you know, starting these health freedom organizations. But this is the one that is still standing, has been standing for a long time. You know, this health freedom movement has not just been the last 5 years. I think people need to realize that. And it's definitely not over. It's important to get on this now. So anything that you can do. So become a member, follow National Health Federation. We have a conference upcoming. We decided on a date, right? April
16th through the 19th of next year.
Right, which will be in Dallas. If you want to come and be involved and, you know, actually listen to speakers and things like that. But there's a lot of ways that you can get involved with this, so we can support and keep Scott going to the Codex meetings and doing everything he does.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Kendra.
You're welcome.
And
So thank
Jenny.
you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yes,
And hopefully you come on again.
I will. All right, if you'll have me. Nice not to call.
Talk about wearables. We can have a whole podcast, whole hour just talking about wearables.
Or we could have a whole podcast talking about what's going on here, which includes wearables.
Yes, we would love that. That would be great.
Pardon?
We'll get you scheduled.
Okay. Thank you, Kendra. Thank you, Jenny.
Have a wonderful day.
Yeah. Thank you.
You too. Bye for now. Bye.